Evening, y'all. I'm on my reading Proverbs 20. Version that we'll be reading tonight is a little bit different than the ones that we have been reading. It's called the Scriptures, and it's probably going to sound a little bit different because it keeps a lot of the like Hebrew words for things, and it's like a more direct translation and things like that. But we'll get at it, right? It's Proverbs 20. Wine is a scoffer, strong drink a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. The dread of a sovereign is like the roaring of a lion. Whoever provokes him sins against his own life. For a man can cease from strife his esteem, but every fool bursts out. The lazy one does not plow after the autumn. A harvest time he inquires, there is none. Counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding draws it up. Most men proclaim each his own loving commitment, but who finds a trustworthy man? The righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. Let's see. Pretty important one right there, right? A sovereign who sits on the throne of judgment is scattering all evil with his eyes. Who says, I have cleansed my heart, I am purged of my sin. Differing weights and differing measures, both of them are an abomination to Yahweh. Yahweh is like the original Hebrew name for God, right? Even a child is known by his deeds, whether his work is clear and right. The hearing ear and seeing eye, Yahweh has made them both. Do not love sleep, lest you become poor. Open your eyes, be satisfied with bread. Evil, evil, cries the buyer, but when he has gone his way, then he boasts. There is gold in a multitude of rubies, but the lips of knowledge are a precious vessel. Take the garments of one who is guarantor for a stranger, and hold it as a pledge for when it is for foreigners. Bread gained by deceit might be sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth is filled with gravel. By counsel plans are established, and by wise guidance wage battle. He who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets. Therefore do not associate with him. Who speaks smoothly with his lips? Whoever curses his father or his mother, his lamp is put out in deep darkness. An inheritance obtained with greed at the beginning is not blessed at the end. Do not say, I repay evil. Wait for Yahweh, and he saves you. Differing weights are an abomination to Yahweh, and a false scale is not good. The steps of a man are from Yahweh. What does a man know about his own way? It is a snare for a man to say rashly, it is set apart, and only later to reconsider his vows. A wise sovereign winnows out the wrong and turns the wheel over them. Sorry, some of these pages done stuck together. The spirit of a man is the lamp of Yahweh, searching all his inmost parts. Loving commitment and truth watch over the sovereign, and he shall support his throne by loving commitment. The comeliness of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray hair. The wind blows that wound cleanse away evil and strokes the inner parts of the heart. Yeah, this one reads a little different than the ones that we've been reading, right? But it's how this stuff was originally written. I think sometimes it's maybe good to read some of the harder translations because it makes you stop and think about it instead of being able to just skim over it, right? Let's see. For a man to cease from strife is esteemed, but every fool bursts out. My best understanding of that, right? Subject to change. For a man to cease from strife, right? Basically, like strife is whenever you have, like you got a problem with somebody else, right? So if you stop having a problem with somebody else, that is esteem, right? Whenever you esteem somebody, so you hold them in high regard, so you'll be held in high regard if you don't have problems with folks, right? At least as far as you're concerned, right? They might have a problem with you, and chances are, if you're doing things the right way, they will have a problem with you, right? Because Jesus warns us time and time again in the New Testament that if you follow Jesus and you're actually following Jesus, people are going to hate you for it, right? But you're not responsible for how they react to you. You're responsible for how you treat them, and they will have to bear the consequences for how they treated you, right? But every fool bursts out is the second part of that verse 3. And so fools lash out. You can say the most mild insult or even joke with them, right? And they'll take it as serious, and they lash out, and it's them against the world. Nobody's ever in their corner or anything like that, right? And they think that they're bad A's because of it. Not really. You're just a fool, right? The righteous man walks in his integrity, and his children are blessed after him. There's a lot of mention of generational curses, but also generational blessings all throughout the Bible, right? You can see practical examples of it too. And it doesn't mean that people are perfect. Doesn't mean that their kids are perfect, right? But it means that they did the absolute best that they knew how with what they had, right? And don't worry, because God will take your shortfallings into account. He already has, right? I think He takes that kind of stuff into consideration on whether you've on your shortcomings and your level of understanding, right, and things like that. And as it deepens, you're held to a higher regard, right? A third grader knows addition, and so does a college professor, right? But you would hold them to different different levels of regard, I guess, right? Because one's more versed in it than the other. So for the righteous man walking in his integrity, you do the absolute best that you can with what you got where you're at. And the Lord will meet you where you're at, but He ain't going to leave you there. He'll provide the path for you to take it farther, but you've got to have the courage and the strength and the wisdom to take that next step. He'll make the path for you, but He can't walk for you, right? But whenever you do that, whenever you walk in integrity, His children are blessed after Him, right? Whenever it's, oh, you're so-and-so, son, ain't you, right? That can kind of change people's attitude towards you a little bit if you're, the son of somebody who is doing the right thing and help folks out and things like that. But if your heavenly dad, or not your heavenly, goodness gracious, excuse me, if your earthly dad was a dirtbag, and it comes across like, oh, you're so-and-so, son, right? Then that's something that you'll have to fight against, and you'll have to prove them wrong, right? And some folks might not give you the same chances or anything like that. And if you had a fantastic earthly father, I ain't gonna lie, I did. I had an awesome example of one, still have an awesome example of one. Be thankful for it and try to emulate it as best you can, right? And you don't try to emulate him, you try to emulate what made him that way. What made him that way? Well, his righteousness, right? Following God with integrity. So you follow God with integrity, you ain't got to worry about looking like your dad, right? If he was a good example. If he wasn't, cool, man, break the chains, right? Start it so that your kids will have blessings to be able to inherit from you, right? Who says, I have cleansed my heart, I am purged of my sin. At least for me, a lot of the times in the Bible, it seems like whenever the Bible says who says and then it has a quote, the obvious answer is either God or nobody. It's some kind of rhetorical question. It's usually all or nothing, at least my best understanding, right? Again, still making my way through the whole thing cover to cover, but here we are, right? And I don't think anybody has, right? Nobody can cleanse their own heart. Nobody can purge themselves of their sin, because otherwise we wouldn't need a Savior and we wouldn't need Jesus, and this whole book would be pointless, right? So whenever you're talking to somebody, if somebody at your church or mentor or anything like that, right, is like, oh, this is what I did to clean my heart, and this is how I've never sinned before, right? Be careful of those folks. Be real careful of those folks, right? Because they did not cleanse their heart, and they did not purge themselves of their sin, right? Jesus did it for them. Differing weights and different measures, both of them are an abomination to Yahweh, right? Hold on one second. Oh, fantastic. All right. Sorry, TV cut off the weather that we were watching for tornadoes in the area and stuff like that, and cut to some kids' show. That was really loud and annoying, so we turned it off. Differing weights and differing measures, both of them are an abomination to Yahweh. Man, this one's repeated multiple times, even throughout this same proverb, right? That's Proverbs 10. Then let's see, later on, differing weights are an abomination to Yahweh, and a false scale is no good. Verse 23, right? So even in the same proverb, it's repeating the same idea of differing weights and different measures. Both of them are an abomination. So what that means is that you're judging things differently. You're not holding things to the same level of accountability, right? You should be holding your brother, and you should be holding your friends, and you should be holding strangers, all basically all the same standard, right? Within context, right? It's not like, oh, well, I don't like this person, right? They make me mad, and so every chance I have, to mess them up at work or anything like that, right? Like you throw the book at them, and now they're all kinds of jacked up, messed up, and things like that. But whenever your friend makes a mistake at work, you cover for him, and oh, it wasn't his fault, or I understand, it's fine, you ain't gotta do anything, right? I think all that is considered an abomination, because that is so against the nature of God, right? He doesn't hold different people to different standards, I wouldn't say. You either believe in the Son or you don't, right? Doesn't matter if you're Jew, doesn't matter if you're Gentile, doesn't matter if you're white, black, red, male, female, whatever it is, right? It all comes down to belief and faith in His Son, right? And so to hold people to a different standard, right? I think that goes against them, and that's why it's kind of considered an abomination, especially when you know better. And that being said, for folks who have never heard of Jesus or anything like that, I don't think God holds them to a different standard, but I think it's within a different context, if that makes any sense, right? I guess the best example I can think of is kind of like a state trooper. If you're going 130 down the highway, right, And, somebody who's 16, somebody who's 25, one of them's doing it for fun and one of them's trying to get their pregnant wife for the hospital or something like that, right? They both break the law? Yes. Are there consequences for breaking the law? Yes. Is the context different? Also yes. But is the law at the same standard? Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think a lot more on that one, being honest with you. But I think just basically what it comes down to is for the whole differing weights and measures are an abomination, right? You gotta have the same standards for everybody, right? Taking into account grace and mercy. Even a child is known by his deeds, whether his work is clear and right. Man, even kids, you can tell the kids from the crap kids by how they act, right? And if you can do that for kids, how much more can you do it for adults? Let's see. By counsel, plans are established, and by wise guidance, the ways you battle. This one's been repeated throughout a bunch of other Proverbs already, right? You can't go through it alone. You gotta have people who can mentor you and can guide you and can help you out. Because congratulations, you're in spiritual warfare, whether you want to ever want to admit it or not. So if you're waging battle, there's only one example I can think of, or a handful of examples I can think of, I guess, where somebody waged a battle and they didn't have any kind of physical backup, right? But it was because they had God himself backing them up. And that would be David whenever he fought and killed Goliath, and Samson whenever he took the jawbone of a donkey and killed like 1,000 Philistines or something like that, right? But unless you're one of them two, good luck winning the fight all by yourself, right? Have friends and have the right kind of friends. It is a snare for a man to say rashly, it is set apart, and only later to reconsider his vows. A lot of these Proverbs we've been going over about wisdom and things like that kind of talk about being patient, right? Being prudent, not immediately lashing out with something. And the word set apart, whenever you translate that in a lot of newer translations and stuff like that, it's the word holy, right? For something to be holy, it means to be set apart. Basically, what this is saying, to my best understanding, is that you don't, without thinking about it, make a rash promise to God and say, hey, this is holy, this is set apart, this is, all yours, this is, I'll do this every time, I'll never do this again kind of thing, right? If I do this, then I'll have to do this, or whatever it is. Because if you make a promise to God, right, he's going to hold you to it. Because you said you would, right? And then only later to reconsider your vows, right? Only later to actually think about the consequences of your actions. It's no bueno, man. You need to think about the consequences of stuff, and sometimes the consequences will be good, right? But if you're like, hey Lord, I dedicate this kid to you, cool. I forget her name, but it was Samuel's mom in the book of 1 Samuel, right? Samuel went on to be a extremely important prophet who anointed a lot of the first kings of Israel, right, and helped them get their reign established and everything like that. And she said, hey Lord, if you help me have a kid, she was barren and couldn't have him, she says, I dedicate him to you. And so she did, but she was held accountable to that promise, and because of that, good things happened. And she loved her kid, right? She loved Samuel. She was his mama, and she was as good a mama as any in the history of the world, I guess. But after a certain amount of time, she had to give her kid up because she said that she would. And he went and lived at the temple, and he grew up. and went on to become an actual prophet, right? And she'd get to see him, I think maybe only once or twice a year after that, after he turned 5 or something like that, right? So don't make promises that are rash, right? But they're still, that being said, there are promises worth making. And if they're worth making, they're worth keeping. Let's see. The comeliness of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray hair. Don't worry, it's okay to be bald, right? I guess it's kind of like the thing that young men are known for and proud for and things like that is their strength, right? Physically being able to handle business one way or another. But as you get older, you know, you're going to lose muscle mass. Testosterone is going to drop. Things are going to happen physiologically, right? Where you might work out more than you did when you were younger, but you ain't really going to be much stronger, right? You ain't going to have the same kind of basis and natural ability. But you've had time, and with time, I think that's kind of a component of wisdom, right? It's not only fearing the Lord, but it's consistently fearing the Lord with integrity, and it's doing that day in, day out whenever you do that, right? Or the other definition of wisdom of being skillful in something. You only gain actual skill in doing something from doing it over and over and over again, and importantly, making mistakes, and more importantly, learning from them. And all that stuff takes time. And so, as you lose your strength, you gain knowledge and you gain wisdom and things like that. And so for young men, play to your strengths, right? If you're strong, cool. Go out there and help your neighbor move it down a tree, get his truck unstuck, build something for him, move something for him, right? Get furniture in and out of the house or something like that. That being said, the old man might not be able to move furniture as much anymore as he used to, or help cut down, or help like haul trees off or anything like that. But he'll have the technique for building the furniture. He'll have the skill to be able to fell that tree where it needs to fall, so it's not gonna hit a house or a truck or a fence or anything like that, right? And it takes both. And that's why I think a lot of times your mentors and stuff like that aren't necessarily people that's going to be the same age as you. It's going to be someone who's a little bit older than you, so you can kind of pass on some of those skills and way of thinking and things of that nature. And then you get to execute that with your current strength, right? Or with the strength that you'll have. And then once it gets to a point where your strength starts fading, but you've been able to take those skills and turn them into something on your own, and you can turn around and give it to the next generation, and it just gets more efficient and better and stuff like that, just over time. But there always needs to be a continuation of being a mentor and an apprentice, I reckon. But anyways, that's my 2 cents. Spend it how you want it. Good luck and God bless y'all.